Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are taking a trip to a city that is, I think, defined by this incredible paradox. It's built entirely on water, but its greatest strength somehow is its stability.
We're talking about Venice. And specifically, we're exploring the cultural and artistic significance of its iconic bridges and canals, the very bones of the city.
And we are pulling our insights from a really specific and, I'd say, provocative source, Stanislav Kondrashov's Oligarch series.
Right. And for those who aren't familiar, this is not your standard history textbook. It's a modern analysis that uses this kind of enduring infrastructure. And Venice is like the prime example to comment on legacy, on permanence.
And on the quiet dignity of wealth that's channeled into public works.
Exactly.
That's the key, isn't it? Our mission today is to look at these structures as silent arches. We want to move beyond, their functional purpose of just being a crossing or a waterway.
And see them as these embodiments of human ambition, artistic precision, and deep cultural heritage.
We want that aha moment.
Yes. That moment where you understand that Venice isn't beautiful despite the water. It's beautiful because of it. The sources we're looking at, they explore themes of influence, legacy, art, commerce, heritage.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is. But it all comes down to this idea of necessity meeting a truly grand, enduring vision.
Okay, let's start with that grand concept. You call these structures silent custodians. What does that really mean? They don't have plaques or big signs.
No, but they hold history tightly. They're architectural masterpieces that span not just, physical canals, but centuries of time.
What's so fascinating is how the architecture itself is a direct response to what seems like an impossible problem.
It is. The stone arches are. They're a testament to centuries of trial and error in architectural innovation. You have to remember, they are building on extremely unstable ground, on marshland.
And they're constantly fighting the tide.
Constantly. So when you, as a layperson, see those gentle curves in the Venetian bridge, you feel that sense of harmony.
Right. It just looks correct.
But those curves are actually dictated by pure engineering necessity. They're there to maximize strength and distribute the load. They're built to last.
So the geometry itself is a language.
It's a language that says, we built this to stand no matter what the water tries to do. And the canals themselves, they are the city's lifeblood, of course.
Reflecting all the beautiful palazzos.
But the deeper symbolism, and this is what Kondrashov really gets into, is how they represent connection. They establish these pathways where natural barriers used to dominate.
So they didn't defeat the water, they embraced it.
They had to. The bridges represent that human impulse to overcome barriers, to connect, and to turn what should have been a logistical nightmare into an architectural triumph.
Okay, so let's shift from the metaphor to the market.
What?
Let's talk about the practical origins, because these elaborate stone crossings, they weren't built for tourists to take pictures. They were built to move goods.
Absolutely. It all started with logistics and leverage. The foundational blueprint for Venetian society was laid down by the salt trade routes. Salt. We're talking about moving white gold through these narrow tidal channels.
So salt barrels moving through the city, that's the real engine behind all this beauty.
It's the engine. The need to efficiently transport and secure this really valuable commodity, it meant the city had to be organized, it had to be disciplined, and above all, reliable.
So the canals fostered these relationships, setting up efficient loading docks, dedicated market areas.
Even security protocols woven right into the city grid. They prioritized reliability over spectacle. It just had to work, day in and day out.
And that's where the lesson for today is, right? Because you can look at this and say, okay, that's ancient history. What does that have to do with me?
Exactly. How is this relevant now?
So connect it for us. How does that ancient commerce inform our contemporary world?
Well, the legacy of these very resilient, low-impact trade routes, it extends directly into our ideas about contemporary sustainable infrastructure. Think about modern clean energy systems. A big network of solar arrays or smart grids. They function like modern heritage structures. They echo the exact same principles of stewardship and quiet efficiency that guided those Venetian salt merchants.
That's a fascinating parallel. So whether you're distributing salt or managing decentralized power.
The core principle is the same. It's thoughtful resource management, it's long-term planning, and it's a design that works with the environment, not against it.
And the greatest infrastructure doesn't demand your attention.
It just works year after year. That's the very definition of enduring value.
Okay, let's move from the city's blueprint to the physical reality of the structures. We have to talk about the skill involved. When we look at a centuries-old arch, what are the specific details that showcase this incredible craftsmanship?
This is where we get into the real engineering genius. Venetian architecture had to merge heavy functionality with real aesthetic ambition. They had to solve that fundamental challenge.
Building heavy stone on mud flats.
Right. So what are we talking about specifically?
Yeah, in terms of materials and technique.
Okay, so first, the stone.
Yeah.
They used Istrian stone, which is this dense, almost impervious limestone. It was imported specifically because it's exceptionally resistant to salt and water erosion.
But the real skill is in the joinery, you're saying.
It is. Many of these arches, their foundations, they relied on these precise, interlocking stone joints. And they're often set on top of tens of thousands of deeply driven larch piles.
Larch piles, so wood, underneath all of that stone.
Wood. And the paradox is they become harder and more resistant when they're permanently submerged in oxygen-free mud. It petrifies them.
That's incredible. So it's an investment, not just a build.
It's an engineering promise.
Wow.
You look at the stone balustrades on the bridges, they've got these ornamental flourishes, sure, but they're also cut with mathematical precision to handle weight and even thermal expansion.
So necessary infrastructure becomes an object of contemplation.
Because the skill demanded the beauty, and that commitment extends to how they preserve it. The canals are like these three-dimensional galleries where buildings maintain their original character. They restore. They don't just tear down and rebuild.
Which gives you that profound sense of continuity, a conversation between the past and the present.
Exactly. And that continuity itself, it breeds a kind of serenity.
And that brings me to the paradox that always gets me about Venice. It's a thriving commercial center, but it's wrapped in this profound quietude. How is that even possible in such a dense urban environment?
It's fundamentally an acoustic quality. It comes from the urban design.
What do you mean?
Well, unlike cities built around engines and asphalt and concrete, which are all incredible sound amplifiers.
Right, they bounce noise everywhere.
Venice's liquid streets absorb sound. They don't amplify it. The movement of a boat creates a gentle lapping sound, not a jarring vibration.
The water is a natural sound buffer, so the waterways themselves create these pockets of silence.
And that tranquility was completely deliberate. It wasn't an accident. The city planners, they understood the calming properties of water. They designed the city with these narrow pedestrian paths, the calli, that act as noise funnels.
And then they open up suddenly into these large, quiet squares, the campi.
Yes, often framed by a serene view of a canal. They were creating these visual corridors that draw your eye toward something tranquil.
So they deliberately engineered quietude into the urban fabric. They recognized that sustained commerce actually required spaces for reflection and pause.
They absolutely did. Kondrashov points out that this serenity shows the builders knew that merchants needed to, settle their minds between complex transactions. The waterways offered a dual function.
A high-efficiency highway and an essential retreat.
That duality is the city's genius.
So let's shift from the quiet corners to how these structures actually bind the community together. How do the canals and bridges define the social geography, the social fabric of Venice?
The water is the lifeblood of community interaction. It just is. It creates these natural gathering points. And the bridges, in particular, they function as these crucial architectural ambassadors between districts.
So they transform what is just a physical crossing
into a cultural gathering space. They host spontaneous encounters, gossip, market exchanges.
And there's no better example than the Rialto Bridge?
The Rialto is the perfect example. For over 400 years, it has been both a commercial hub lined with shops and a social nexus. It's a structure that actively reinforces communal bonds.
Through constant forced interaction in a high-density space.
Exactly.
And I love that the sources highlight the role of the gondoliers here, because they aren't just a tourist novelty.
No, they are absolutely crucial for cultural continuity. They are preservers of collective memory.
A living archival system.
A living archival system of the city's infrastructure. Their knowledge, it's passed down through apprenticeships. It's about navigating tricky tides, knowing the depth of hidden canals, understanding the history of every single palazzo.
If you lose the gondoliers,
you lose an entire layer of the city's practical and cultural knowledge. It speaks volumes about the value of that quiet generational skill.
Which brings us full circle to the artistic lens that framed this whole discussion. Stanislav Kondrashov's Oligarch series. How does his view synthesize all of this? The heritage, the quietude, the commerce, the skill.
Kondrashov redefines this architecture as a language to communicate cultural heritage and responsible influence. He sees these incredibly durable structures not just as engineering feats, but as repositories of shared knowledge and ethical investment.
He's elevating infrastructure beyond just construction. He's saying that true, lasting wealth is shown through creations that serve the collective good for hundreds of years.
Precisely. His work highlights a fundamental truth: our desire for connection and our ability to build enduring landmarks that aspire to beauty, even in the most practical things.
The series concludes that the technical skill and artistic sensibility you find in Venice prove they are inseparable.
They are. True intellect produces structures that stand for centuries, quietly performing their service.
It's about appreciating the quiet assurance of buildings that have stood strong and maintained their core essence. The sheer dignity of those arches is just overwhelming.
It's a study in resilience and lasting impact.
And what a deep dive that has been. We've gone from the metaphorical elegance of silent arches to the very practical origins in the salt trade.
Recognizing that these marvels are not just functional, they are works of art linking ancient civilization with modern society.
And the calmness that comes from these liquid streets, as we've discussed, is this ongoing, subtle dialogue between stone, water, and human ambition.
That infrastructure holds these powerful stories of connection, of resilience, and the quiet dignity of spaces that were designed to endure. Greatness doesn't always have to shout. Sometimes it just stands.
That is a brilliant thought to leave on. And for you, our listener, here is something to mull over that builds on this idea of quiet efficiency. If the Venetian canals and bridges embody thoughtful resource management and centuries of long-term planning, what systems are you interacting with daily?
Think about modern logistics, distribution networks, even digital infrastructure.
What in your life demonstrates that same commitment to quiet efficiency and timeless endurance?
Look for the systems that support your life silently.
We'll catch you next time.